am so honored and privileged to be able to sit here and talk to this esteemed panel out here. It's iconic New Rochelle High School. Not only football players, but men. They're iconic in their own fields and they're all successful. And one thing we do have in common, we came out of the New Rochelle football program. First of all, I'd like to introduce Reverend Philip Brickle, the founder and pastor of the Lost Sheep Ministry in Raleigh, North Carolina. Drexel Carter, he is a retired corrections officer out of New York State. And Coach Harold Crocker, who is an athletic director at Ramapo College in New Jersey. And Bishop Fetson Leak, spiritual leader, spiritual advisor, coach for every New Rochelle High School team since 1974. For this, right now, we're going to segue into a poem that was written by Calvin Anderson.
The difference between thinking and doing and living in the 21st century. They teach us about being a real quarterback-oriented games. We don't have to just use video games and live in the shadows of good things because of them. We grow up with agility far larger and bigger than we are tall. Parents are the champions and have to be our first life coaches and know-it-alls. Who knows how this came to be? Coaches will ask you if you know your right foot from your left, if you know yourself, if you act knowingly good or bad, if you can move and negotiate a field with style and form, if you can tackle or throw a pass, or if your last name is that of a clown. If you can let someone know on the team that you are in trouble before you cause yourself or someone else trouble. If you are ready to learn teamwork or aware that you started out today with your pants down or your sportsmanship was left on the kitchen table, if you know the social studies, the alphabets, science, music, characters, and the stats and the numbers of a great student player eligible to stay on the team, and if you know the poise of great athletic champions and their scientific attitudes that are historical or music to us now, if you have the swag of the game, the discipline, the performance, and artistic form down pat, and if you have the style of gymnastic that the sport has with life, if you have the work ethic and determination to make it all seem easy and not a game at all, if you have the knowledge of all the above, or you don't know things like this even make the difference. I think that when it comes to the importance of parents and their field and self-knowledge, wisdom, virtues, and courage, their teachings, love, respect, care that they illustrate on the field and in the grind of life with their actions and their ideas, experiences, muscle, and strategic magic and skills wrapped around us with their priceless love. For their verbs to be that make us winners in this hard and fast third century that without them, kids and adults, athletes could hardly see or do anything at all. Parents teach us the difference between playing video games and playing on the field. Parents teach us how to be champions. A huge hug should go to parents, coaches, and parent-like community people who have love on the field for you and who are champions for your life, both in and out the games.
My name is Gerry Whitted, and from this point on, we're going to expound on what that poem really says to us as individuals. And each panel member would tell us a little something about themselves prior to expounding on that. And that was a lot to digest. You know, it took me from being on the field to off the field. It took me back to my parents and mentors and back to my teammates. And one thing that really stood out with me was the difference between a video game and playing on the field. The intangibles, the camaraderie, the blood and sweat, the smelling of that field, the noise of the crowd, the cheerleaders, the band playing, my teammates cheering me on, rooting me on, that pain of running. And that's the reality of it all. And then understanding what it's like to pull for each other, to help one another up, uplift one another when somebody's down. Reach out your hand and pick them up. You can't do that in a video game. And that's what I want to expound on from this point on as far as the poetry is concerned. And that's what hit me, just being up there and the values that we learn playing on that field in Rochelle High School is being humanized. And all the coaches that put their time and sacrifice and molding men that were boys. And for me, I had a unique experience. I was playing varsity at 14 years old, and I was scared. But with the help of my teammates and coaches, everybody encouraged me. And then going home, and my mother always saying to me, go back the next day, everything's going to be all right. She trusted in the coaches too. She had a relationship with them. We all have personal relationships off the field as well. And that is who I am today. That all that matters. And when times are going bad for me, when I have my challenges, I think back to my years playing football from Alba Leonard to when I graduated and how that carried me on to be successful in college and in life. Reverend Brickle, you have anything to add to that?
Yes. When I looked at the and listened to the words of the video and the poem, it took me back to having a two-parent household, which I think is missing a lot. Doesn't take away from what one parent is capable of doing, but having a mother and father, first of all, and a father who was a disciplinarian, um, taught me some incredible things about being disciplined in certain areas of my life. Um, and then that transferred into athletics. Um, I played at Alberlin. I started out under Coach Al Rendy, who was a great coach. I enjoyed Coach Rendy. And then I moved on to New Rochelle High School football. And I actually played JV. And then under Coach Walsh. And then I actually fractured my ankle my junior year in high school, which just took away my ability to play. But through determination and discipline and encouragement by my parents, I moved on to have a great varsity season. I think about the comradeship, the coaching, the love that we had for one another, and just a desire to want to win. All of those things played an important role in my life. And also, some of the things that he talked about was taking steps that also was detriment. I look at myself as an athlete and appreciate what my parents had did for me and how they supported me. But I also look at myself being a good athlete and also gaining privileges. Because when you're an athlete, sometimes they'll pass you in class when you don't deserve to pass. When you're an athlete, sometimes things come to you that normally wouldn't come to you, and you have to be able to be grounded enough to to realize that it's not all about athletics, but it's about life and it's about being a man. So as I moved on, I made some critical mistakes in my life because of being a good athlete. So many things came to me that I didn't discern how to turn them away at the time, because I also think that being a good athlete, you also have to be grounded spiritually, because without the spiritual base, and that makes you capable of doing anything or thinking that is you and not realizing that there's a higher power that's under control. And not understanding that piece of it caused me to go astray, which caused me to get out of athletics, which caused me to lose my scholarship, and which caused me to leave school and not graduate. So there's some pieces that young athletes need to understand that go along with being a good athlete, um, and not destroying their future by not being able to realize the consequences that come from making bad choices while still being a good athlete.
Thank you, Ralph. Coach Crocker.
Yes, Jer. I'm was sitting here thinking about everybody that's kind of on this video with us here today, and we were all blessed in a way because we all had something to do with New Rochelle High School football. And I think that coming from New Rochelle, a little bit about myself. Obviously, I played for New Rochelle High School. I was captain in '68, graduated in '69. Went away to play in college. I was very fortunate. And played for 4 years, got out and started coaching at Albert Leonard with Al Rendy. So that was a blessing right there. And then I had the opportunity to be the first New Rochellian to get back into coaching and be the head coach at New Rochelle High School. So that to me is just, I can't tell you, a smile from ear to ear thinking about being blessed to be able to do such a thing. And then I moved on to Iona College in New Rochelle, stayed right across the street. But, I go back to the poem and I think family. I think family is the number one, piece that, we talk about. I tell all young coaches that every coach had a coach that inspired them to become a coach. So I think the coaching piece, the mentorship piece, the family piece is what's really, the key to our bind of us being together, that we are part of a New Rochelle football family. And I don't think any of us take it for granted either, that we were blessed to grow up in New Rochelle. We talk about the two parents. I was blessed with two great parents that, were there for me, and they followed me through my career. They gave of themselves. They helped when they could. Two working people, worked hard, but they were there to keep me focused and moving in the right direction. And I say thank God that they were there for me. And I think that's the key, and it comes back. And I think of my 1980 undefeated team at New Rochelle High School, and their word was together. Their key word was do it together, because it's a family that can get it done together. When you have people surrounding you that, as Rev said, pick you up when you're down, or help you up in a tough situation, or help you out when you need help, that help is there from your teammates and help is there from your coaches. You have people to go to, you have people to lean on. It's just a wonderful thing to have. And that's, could be some of the issues we're having today is we're everyone's not blessed the way we were blessed. And I think that, you just think about it. It all comes down to football. To me, is the greatest game. I don't think there's any better game to be played, team sport to be played, no matter what. When you get knocked down, you got to get up. You got to learn. You got to learn that you're going to lose. And how do you deal with losing? When you win, how do you win with class?
That's right.
How do you show people that you have class and you never show people up? So I think that, I think you're in the 1 yard line and you got to score. You gotta work with the people surrounding you. When you got to hold them out of the end zone, you got to work with everybody else, the other 10 people surrounding you. So it's all a unit, all a team, and it's all a family. So when I heard the poem, immediately family just came to my mind immediately. How blessed we are as a family, and how important that is in order to move forward successfully.
Brexton.
Well, I appreciate this evening and being able to speak with you all. I come from a totally different era. When I listen to some of you in terms of the area that I grew up in, the focus was mainly on athletics. It was not on doctors. It was not on lawyers. It was not on professionalism. It was more about athletics and about winning. And that was from the time you woke up in the morning till the time you went to bed at night. And everything was centered around athletics. Mm. The poem is reflective. I can't stand here or sit here and tell you that about my parents. My parents were not involved in athletics. They could have cared less about what I was doing in terms of athletics. But one thing that stuck out in my head as I played inertia high school football. We were also undefeated, but at the same time, what stuck out in my head whenever I went on the field was winning. Winning was operative to me, to persevere, to not allow any impediment to get in the way. And yes, we too, or I should say it, when we got down there on the 2-yard line, the only thing I knew that we were going to score. And because of life, the way life is, I think it led me to a place in staying around and focusing on young people and kind of emphasizing academics and athletics. And that's what led me really, when you talk about, that's what really led me to having that camp down in City Park during the summertime, when I could harness maybe 2 or 3 or maybe 6, maybe 8 young men, maybe 10 at the most, and share some of my experiences and also try to mentor them to become the best men that they could be and strive to be the best that they could be and to stick with it, not to quit. There are seasons and times when young people want to quit, or when they think losing is okay, at least I got to play the game. And I never understood it that way. I just think winning is extremely important. And I think that we're in a culture now where people want to participate, but they're not thinking about winning. And you have to really stand on the platform and feel the pulse. I mean, there's an actual pulse when you hear that crowd. When he talked about the crowd in the stand, you could feel that pulse, and especially around, if you guys remember, when that field was packed around Thanksgiving, you could feel the emotions radiated through the locker room. And of course, I played for Lou Emerson, who had Parkinson's at the time, and he would be calm in the morning when he walked in there, but during halftime, he would be shaking like a leaf on a tree and pleading to us, "We've got to do it. I know you can do it." And then he would pull out his book, and he would pull out the book of poems in his head, not physically, but he had a book of poems in his head that he would recite and take you almost to the edge with a poem and make you feel that you're invincible, that there was nobody else out there on that field, and you were going to get the job done no matter what it cost. So that's the era that I grew up in.
Speaking of Lou Anderson, Rev, you played for Coach Anderson this last year. What are your
Yes,
memories of him?
My memories of Coach was that even though his health had deteriorated because the year before he had a heart attack, and so he didn't coach us that year. But then our final year, he came back and he had I believe he had just as much fire going out as he came in. He was a joy to be under. He was a great example of what a coach should be, even though the years had caused him to his health to deteriorate. So I mean, I really enjoyed being under Coach Anderson that last year.
Coach Crocker, you played under Coach Anderson as well. I'd like to know what your experience was as a player and how he might have influenced you as a state championship coach. Not only were you state championship coach, you coached from junior high school to the NFL. You had something to do with all levels of football.
Yeah, I was blessed. Coach Lou was one of a kind. Um, he was a great American.
yeah,
I don't think many people. He was misunderstood sometimes, which was a shame because he had a heart of gold and he really cared for his players. He cared for Rochelle and Rochelle football. Um, he was a real classic throwback to a time when football was the most important thing, and it should have been the most important thing in young men's lives. He had a lot of fire, a lot of zest. We had great coaches. I mean, Lou was the leader, but if you look at Paul Ryan, you look at many of the ones that followed. I mean, Fetz was around, a great coaching staff. There were people you mentioned, Walsh and JV coaches, Ramondo. We could go down the line, name after name, and they all were classic in their own way. They all had an edge, and game day was like Fetzen said. He was all over it, and I still have. And I was going to bring out some quotes, but I didn't bring it with me. I still have his first day of practice at Rochelle High School back when I was playing. You got two pairs of shorts, two pairs of two T-shirts, Rochelle High School football, and you got a book of poems and slogans
right.
that he had put together, and I still have it to this day. And I used it when I was coaching, and I go back to it many times. Sometimes I just chuckle at some of the rhymes and the poems that are in there, but then some of them really hit home about what you need to have character and how you need to perform as a man. And he was just a classic throwback coach. And when he got going in the heat of the game, or like Rev, you said, we got down by the goal line or something, he
Yeah,
was all over it. He tried to put me in a game a year after I graduated, and when I was in street clothes, he got so excited. I was at the Iona game, and I was standing near him at the Iona game, and I was playing in college, and he looked around for somebody, and he grabbed me by the arm, and he was like, well, he called me Rosie, and that's another story. Rosie, you got to get in there. I said, Coach, I graduated. I can't play today. I'd love to get in there. But that was classic Lou, and I'm telling you the truth. It was we have hundreds of stories that we could go on and on about Coach Lou Amundsen.
mhm.
I have one that I want to expound on. I had the pleasure of playing for Coach Anderson his last year and playing for Coach Ryan his first year, which is unique in itself. But talking about the poetry and the spirit of Coach Anderson, my sophomore year, he had a slogan. And before I get into that, I want to let everybody know with this panel here, you have three captains here. I was captain in '74 team. Reverend Brickle was captain of '72 team. And Coach Crocker, were you captain of what year?
68.
68. And I'm just saying this to say leadership, how that really breeds Although we were captains of the football team, it breathed something in you that your peers chose you to be a captain, and you had to carry forth and be an example and a role model for that. And I just want to, I'm saying that because Reverend Brickle was the captain of that last year of Coach Anderson. And he had a slogan that we used to shout out every game. And what was that slogan, Reverend Brickle?
That slogan was, a quitter never wins and a winner never quits. You cruds.
and then he had another one. Remember this one? The Rochelle had down years up to that point. They had losing year after losing year after losing year in the 60s. And after he came back from his heart attack, all I remember him saying every game, somebody's got to pay.
That's right.
Somebody's got to pay. And
That's
as you
right.
were saying, Bishop, you ready to go then.
Yeah.
Ready to go then. And I just want to more than segue. I think I'm the only one on the panel that came from a single parent household. And usually there's a negative connotation attached to that. But my mother was a widow when I was 11 years old, and I was the oldest of 5. So my mother had to carry the weight and the freight. But my father was very, very nurturing, and he had a lot of wisdom, and we always had books in our house, and he was a disciplinarian. So I had a foundation. But coming from 11 years old to 12 years old is a major step. Becoming a teenager, you're around men and other people, and there's a thing called peer pressure, which could be detrimental, it could be positive, or it could be bad. But the influences that I had were like Mr. and Mrs. Brickle, for one, Mr. and Mrs. Carter, for 2, and then I'm a graduate of Bishop's summer camps. I'm laughing, but it wasn't in the true nature what you would call camp, okay?
Right.
It was not, it was a learning experience. And I say this, and I mentioned this to Bishop. He would come down there with his family. His wife was pregnant at the time, and she would be there. They would work out together. And that was instilling something in me about family and what it was to be a man. And these are things that I didn't say to him at the time, and I didn't really understand it or realize it. But as I grew into becoming a man, these things registered. And I think a lot of times we think that we're being taken for granted. A lot of times we might not feel that we're getting the credit we're due. A lot of times we might feel we're being ignored. But I believe 9 times out of 10, people see us. People see us, and it's important that we always be at our best. Although we are fallible, but we have to own up to our mistakes and be role models and teach people that it's okay to make a mistake. But it's not staying down. It's accepting that you made the mistake and growing from it, learning from it, and doing better. And that's something that I feel is lost. And that's where the video games come in. It's okay to lose, but it's not okay to fail. A failure is when you quit. And that's where all those slogans come to play with me. With all of my challenges that I've had, my amputations, that's what got me through therapy. A winner never quits and a quitter never wins.
That's right.
You know, always giving your best, always. You know, there's no time to be feeling sorry for yourself. There's no time for that. It's being selfish and being a team player. I remember after games, win or lose, somebody would have a party. And we would go collectively, the whole team, and have a party. And that brought, that manifested itself into camaraderie and teamwork, and it came out on the field. We were together all the way. And as we say, but my moment about going to the game, you mentioned the Iona game. was that being in that locker room and going into the weight room. We get the pep talk, what we're going to do. Bishop would say his prayer. We get on the bus, because we used to take the bus to City Park. You could drop a pin and hear it fall. Nobody saying anything. And then as soon as we come down that hill on Fifth Avenue at that light at Potter Avenue, the captain would say, helmets on. We come down into the next light, make the left into City Park, hear the crowd, the band playing, and we're off 2 by 2, coming in there, ready to go do our warm-ups. And it was on from there, man. And that's what I remember the most of, that camaraderie. Also, what I want to ask you guys, what?
Gerry, can I say this, Gerry?
Yes.
We recognize that, and I think that football is the greatest sport in the world. I really do. Because it teaches, and this was the impetus of the things that I've done and why I've stayed so close to helping young people at the high school. This is over almost 60 years now. It's a little over 60 years, 50 or 60 years that I've been up there. But I always felt that, I wasn't that super athlete, but I was able to persevere. You all never knew, when I played football, I had rheumatic fever. I could not walk. I couldn't walk. I was not really supposed to be on the field because of my condition, my health condition. I was able to get on there after doing some work with the doctor and convincing my mother that I would take it easy. But if you look at my life, and there was a period of time in my life I couldn't even walk, but because I spent a great deal of time in the hospital when I was smaller. But my point is this, is that I learned it very early on to condition the mind and the body. I learned it very early on to condition both of those facets of who I am, to condition the mind and the body. And I was able to achieve goals that would be far surpassing of what anybody's understanding would be. And that's why when I went into the military and came out, I saw a need in the young people, the people that had the ability. You guys had tremendous ability. You guys could have gone and been pros, and there had to be somebody outside of that to push you to the next level. Because when you get to high school, you got to have people to push you to the next level.
That's right.
Because high school is not all there is, and it is left. And I want to say this: Crocker was extremely good at that, pushing young people to the next level. I think we were extremely we benefited extremely much from the fact that when he left the high school, he went to Iona, and he was always available to bring guys there that he felt had the talent and had the skills to get the job done, to bring them in and to work with them. And that was a plus, and it continues to be a plus. And so that has not changed in me. I will, the Lord said so, I'll continue to do what I do. I want to see young people excel. But there has been a tremendous drop off in the young people, in that technology, in this technological age, or what I'm calling the digital age, has superseded what we thought about as young people and the things that we did. Technology has superseded that, And most of the young people are locked in their homes now. And they don't want to know about the cheers of the crowd. They don't want to know about winning. They want to know, what is the next iPhone that's coming out? What's next in that area? And it's incumbent upon us, I think, and I've said this to you, Gerry, incumbent upon us to stay focused and to stay around them. All of us that are on the panel now, we stay around football. I can look up in the state championship and I'll see Crocker up in the stand. I'll see him walk through the locker room. I'll see him. And he's what I call, and I think every person that talks about they want to be, they want to help young people. I think they should be identifiable. When you walk around young people, you should be identifiable, one way or the other. You may not be identified as a super athlete, but you're identified by who you were in the hall and the way you walk and the things that you've accomplished, because they're out there. And that's for all of us to utilize and to continue to utilize.
And I agree with you. Let me just say this, Gerry. I agree with you, Bishop, because while I was in there, Rochelle, even though I didn't coach on a football team, I was assistant director at the Boys Club with Fuzzy, and also the director at Southside Boys Club. And being recognizable during that time as an athlete at Rochelle High School, and then spending time teaching, playing, and training the kids there, those kids to this day are adults and raised their own families, still recognize, respect, and will respond anytime we have something that we turn on. You look at what we do at the diner, and a lot of those kids that come from Southside came because of our relationship at the Southside Boys Club.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I agree 100% that we have to continue to be recognizable and to stay in their lives. One of the things that I'm so appreciative of, and then I'm gonna shut up, Gerry, is that
No, speak, brother.
Is that what excites me the most is seeing the comradeship and the spirituality piece that takes place when players now, even win or lose, put their arms around each other, get into a circle, and is able to pray. I think that is an important part of our athletic programs today. When I came up, I didn't have anybody praying in the locker room. I didn't have anybody praying on the field. We just went out with that win-win situation, and then we lost and we left, even though we lost well, but we didn't have that piece where we got together, we prayed, we put our arms around each other, and that comradeship that would be built through spirituality, that piece was missing, but I see it now at certain times and when they're playing, and that excites me. I think that's important, Coach Crocker, for athletics, that you have a chaplain. I think that the guys can go to say that they're in trouble. They may not go to their peers to say they're in trouble, but there may be somebody there, like a Bishop Preston, that they can say, Bishop, I'm having trouble with drugs. Bishop, I'm having trouble with my old lady. I want to do something wrong. There's got to be somebody there that they can talk to that will short circuit some of the things that players do before they get to that point. We even see it in the professional ranks. How many players destroy their lives because they're not having somebody to go to help them with some of the situations that they're going through. So I just wanted to interject because I feel that spiritual piece is most important along with the family and the athletic piece. It all makes up one human strong person. So I'm just excited when I see that.
Let me just add this. Let me just add this, because you brought in a very important part that I brings back to, since I've been up at the high school and around coaches and whatnot, and that's normally what I do, is act as that intermediate between family, between kids and their families, because a lot of these kids come from these one-parented homes. A lot of these kids don't have money to spend for lunch, and they don't have the extras that a lot of kids have, and they have problems. You know, we have kids that have come through the programs that were street thugs, were real thugs. There's been guys that I've had to go to court with and get them out. I mean, my presence in court for them has gotten them out. Two particular guys I can look at and think of right now. I see their faces. I saved them from serving 20 to 25 years just by being there. And so it is important. You know, we can't leave that out of the equation. And my presence around Crocker, I was around him, I was around Pinky, I was around Louis. You know, these are invaluable to the coaches, because there are things that I can say and do, not infringing on them, of course, but that I can say and do to the kids that they respect. They kind of buckle down when I walk through the hall or when I say something to them. Okay, thanks, Gerry. I won't.
No, I appreciate the input. This is a collaborative. This is a collective group of people. That's why I invited you all. Coach Crocker, I'd like to get your perspective.
Well, again, it goes back to, you know, we were blessed having people around us at all times. You know, we were blessed with our coaching staff, and I go back to mentorship. You know, how I was mentored, how it was important to me. But Fetson was there, and we had, I'm just going to throw out George Harper. We were blessed with one of the best New Rochelle's rooters, supporters, whatever, that anybody can have anywhere.
And don't forget Rosie now. Rosie with the lunches. Sometimes those kids came. And that was important too.
Well, you know what? I did a Facebook thing the other day with a picture of me and my mom, and she was the director of school lunch at National High School for many years. And how many notes I got online from people that she gave a lunch to, or she took care of the football players. And I've heard this from numerous former players that I coached, and obviously when I played and when you were there, you know, she was key. But again, that's the direction that helped me move forward too. I was blessed that I had mom and dad, and that, you know, and Rose, you know, started the Moms and Dads Club with my dad. You know,
that's right.
Late 60s.
That's
when
right.
High school couldn't have a dinner.
That's right.
You know, they got together with Pete Caputo, who was playing a year younger than me, whose father was the custodian. And they got together. In those days, it wasn't Mom's Dad's Club, it was the Dad's Club.
Yeah.
All the dads got together and raised funds, and then gave us a dinner in '67 because it was double sessions and things were going on. But again, that's a core group of people that are mentors and that are there that you can lean on, and you can ask questions, and you can go when you're in trouble. You know, you talked about it. We as coaches have kids come to us that they're in trouble sometimes, and we got to go to court, and we get in the middle of the night, but we answer those calls.
That's right. That's right.
We answer those calls. To this day, the phone rings, you answer it, and you're there for a person in need. And I think that's a key part of coaching and family and mentorship, and it all ties in with the spiritual piece, and it all ties in with just being a good person. You learn, to me, football, you learn, you know, the goods and the bads. You learn how to react, how to take every situation and take a breath. And you make mistakes. Like Gerry, you said, we all make mistakes. How do we learn from those mistakes? How do we move forward in a positive direction from those mistakes? Those are the key things in life that you don't get from a video game.
Well, what is that poem that that you used to give the award for your father?
Geez, it matters not to me how long I'm on this side. I merely do the best I can and leave the rest to God. You know,
there it is.
Yeah, that's key. That was something he told me. You know, it really doesn't matter how long you're here, how you're on, but you know, you do the best you can and you leave the rest to God. And that's what we learned. And I leave, as Amundsen had his book, I leave everybody, every place I've coached, every place I've been an athletic director, I have my 3 words here, and I put it up. It's be the best you can be at all times in everything you do. I think that's number 1. The golden rule: treat all others the way you want to be treated. I think that's key. And the third piece I tell them is do the right thing. You ask yourself the question: is it right or is it wrong? And if it's right, do it. And if it's wrong, avoid it. So those are my 3 key statements that I make to every place I've coached, every place I'm an athletic director at. That's what I try to impart to young people.
Thank you. Something I want, Bishop, you came with a perfect segue to what I want to get into. A holistic teaching of an athlete, a student athlete, not only dealing with the body and athleticism, but scholastically. And one thing that I feel is really deterring a lot of young athletes, and it goes as far back as when I was playing D1. And what I mean by that D1 is that if you're not recruited or go to a D1 school, you're looked at as a failure, or you look at yourself as a failure. And there's so much competition and peer pressure that could damage your self-esteem. And all this, what I'm talking about is peer pressure, and I want us to expound on that, because everybody is not college material, but that does not make you a failure or less than anybody else. Some people don't want to go to college. You have a lot of plumbers, electronics that are making very good money that didn't go to college. And we should deal with what that child wants to do, that kid, that athlete. Just let them know there's more than sports. Because we used to always be told the odds are against you anyway for becoming a professional athlete. But we need to put that in perspective. Well, what's the alternative? Because as we're growing up, we watch football games, our idols are those athletes. Well, maybe I could do that. Maybe I could do that. And then if you can't do it, what is the option? And I want to get your input, your point of view on how we could really uplift our student athletes that might not have that parent at home that will be able to nurture them into doing something else other than playing football or just staying where they are, something to uplift them and empower them and let them know you are a success. You didn't quit. You're still playing. Even though you're not a starter, you're part of that team. You're part of practice. You're an integral part of the success of this team. Not only are you an integral part of the success of this team, but let's take that further. The community. What are you putting back into this community? I did a master thesis on mentorship. And in that, every underclassman that came in, freshman or sophomore, they had to be mentored by a junior or a senior. That was mandatory. And then when they came up the ranks to become upperclassmen, they had to do the same mentorship. And what that breeds is a brothership. And nobody gets lost. And you have to be not only academically sound, you have to be scholastically and athletically sound, but a good community person. The whole person is what you're striving for. And everybody should consider, when you say each one teach one, each one reach one, teach one, and it takes a village to raise a child. And we're all a big, giant village in this world with a wealth of information and a wealth of love and concern. And just let people know, these young kids know, that D1 is not the ultimate goal. As you were saying, a lot of people went to Iona. A lot of people, you're at D, Ramapo is D2, right?
We're D3.
D3, right. That's, Westchester Community College is another viable option. It's cheaper to go there than any place else, and it's a good stepping stone. And these things need to be talked about other than, being on national TV or ESPN every weekend. That you could be a success without the glamour and the spotlight.
But Gerry, I wish I knew we were going to go down this road, because I would have brought the numbers from the NCAA that shows you that obviously Division III is the biggest division and has the most student athletes, and it shows you the percentages that reach pros when you come out of high school, and it's unbelievable. And I think that's something that needs to get out there to everyone, to see how very few have that unique athletic ability to go on to become a Division I player or a pro, because you see it on TV and you think about it, and that's your goal. And again, your goal should be, be the best you can be in everything you do. And obviously we all would like to be the professional, player. We would all, but there's so many what ifs involved in that. There's so many things that could happen, could go wrong. And we don't all have the athletic ability to do so. But you know what? We could play on a lower level. We can play Division III. We could play Division II. We could play lower, level Division I in all sports. But it's the academics, to me, plus athletics equals success. I think you have both of those intangibles, that you do something athletically and you study the academic piece, you will be successful. I think it's a combination of both. The academic piece is tough. I was no great student. I'm going to tell you right now. I mean, I had Rick Yacone, thank God, for my counselor. Otherwise, I don't know, I might not have made it to college. And, and my mindset was just to get enough to get by at the time. I was one of those that if I could get a 2.0 or, a C or a D, I didn't push for the A's. I just wanted to play the next year, be eligible for the next season. So I went down that road, and I got a wake up call in college. I got hurt, and then I'm saying to myself, I got to look to what else can I do? And my blessing is that I see many wonderful former players that are firemen, that are policemen, that are in the church, that have gone in different directions, and become very successful at what they do. And that's important, because we don't have enough plumbers nowadays. We don't have enough electricians. We need all these people to be good at what they do, and it doesn't have just have to be athletics.
Yeah,
it's essential for what, and I can relate to that. My favorite subject, I could have been a masonry, because my favorite subject was the hallways. And then I could have been a marine biologist, because I would cut class and hang out with Rab by the lakes.
Don't tell it all. Don't tell it all.
But Mr. Yacone is the one that helped me. Him and my mother got together. He just said, Gerry, just graduate. And I had to get a 65 on the Regents, my English Regents. And that was one of the happiest days of my life. But nobody was telling about eligibility. My first year in college, I was ineligible because I didn't have a 70 average. But, statute of limitations. So I played under a different name at that time in order for me to be able to play. But then I had to buckle down my freshman year. I had a 3.5 grade point average. I made the dean's list. Talking about peer pressure, there wasn't any distress. I didn't know anybody in Texas, no family, nothing to do but study. And I had people, my coaches and other, my roommates, they were upperclassmen, and I just saw what they did. I watched them. They were all going to class, and I saw the importance of it and becoming eligible and staying eligible. So I can relate to what you're saying. How about you?
And I can too, Coach. I believe that everybody is born with a gift, and I think when they start discovering what they like, that should be encouraged. And then of course, many of us with our mindsets, like you said, we just wanted to do enough to get over. And like I said earlier in the conversation, we had teachers, because we were athletes, who helped us get over, even though we didn't deserve to get over. And I think that's detrimental to our students today, passing them when they don't deserve to pass and not encouraging them to do the best that they can do. Um, and I experienced some of that, which also hurt me in certain areas of my life skills and growing in my education because I was a good athlete. I was passed on. Um, and so one of the things that I encourage folks to do is know what you're gifted to do and don't go outside of what you're not gifted to do. Because 9 times out of 10, once you fail in that, failure can be difficult and hard to recover from. Um, and I just think that we need to encourage our kids today, first of all, to make sure, and I'm talking about at an early age, because I have kids now that I talk to that's trying to prepare for college, and it's already late 10th grade, 11th grade, and now their parents are wondering where the money's coming from to help out with the education, of course, how much it costs to get in schools. We need to encourage these kids in middle school how important it is to prepare themselves for college and to get good grades and to develop good study habits and to prepare themselves for life, not just for athletics, but for life. Because like you just said, the majority of the folks that are coming out aren't going to make it to the pros. You know, when you go to each level, you know, all of you know this. High school, you got folks just in your county. You go to college, you got people coming from everywhere. You got gifted athletes coming from all over the country and now all over the world. So now the competition becomes much more fierce with so many incredible athletes on the team, which is a lot different than it was when you were in high school or junior high school. So I just think that we should continue to encourage Bishop, and I thank God for your classes because or your camps because the kids need to have that type of encouragement to succeed. We do need plumbers. We do need firefighters. We do need other professions and gifts in those areas because folks have gotten away from that. And once they've gotten into some things that want them and they fail, they just gave up on life. They've chose to do some things that aren't healthy. And we see a lot of our young kids going to jail now. Jails are full with great athletes because they thought that that's all it was and didn't prepare themselves to do anything else. And so what do? They think that they have to go out and sell drugs and do other things in order to live the lifestyle that they thought that being a professional would bring to them. And so they make choices like that because that's the only way they thought that they can live and make a good life for themselves. They were gifted to do something else.
I think on that note, which is right, but on that note, you know, I try to emphasize to the young people that I have at the church that I pastor that in their parents, especially their parents, that every child is just not a college child. They're not college material, you know, and you have to come and face that. And the next step, you've got to come to understand that there are other vocations that they can go into and be successful in life without looking over the rainbow. When I went to school, I was very fortunate because they had all of these occupational classes in the schoolhouse. You know, you didn't have to go off campus to go to a wood shop or electric or drafting. Everything was in-house.
That's right.
So they were being taught right there in-house. You want to be a hairdresser, you want to be a barber, everything was in-house. You want to be a good secretary, typing class, everything was in-house. But when all of that left and it became strictly academic and let's foster this idea that everybody here in this school is going to head to college, you putting a false thought in their head. And even with athletes today, and I've got a couple at the church, you know, I tell a parent, you know, the percentage and Crocker, yeah, you're right. You should have brought those numbers because the percentage of kids that are in college athletically, that go on to play pros, it's way down there. It's in about 1 and 2.5% of those kids. And you got to look at the numbers. The numbers are staggering. But when you see how many walk out of there, and then because of where we are today, these D3 schools, pros are looking at those kids because they feel that, listen, that's where the cream is down there. They've been overlooked. Not these big schools. A lot of the prominent athletes came from these small little colleges that nobody thought existed. And so, there's work to be done. And I'll make this point. Guys like us are very few. And I look over my shoulder and I want to know, who do I hand the baton to? To a father that's trying to live vicariously to a child. I don't need somebody that wish they were out there running the ball. I don't need somebody wish they were, if they could do this, if they were out there, they do. I don't need them out there daydreaming about their days. I need somebody that's going to instruct them when they get on the field and somebody pops them real good and they get up and they want to cuss them out or they want to start fighting, pull them over to the sideline and say, we don't do that.
That's right.
You got knocked down. You got knocked down just like it was said. You got knocked down. Now get up.
Mm-hmm.
Now the best way to get him back is to either run a touchdown or tackle the next guy that's coming through the hole. That's where you get your licks in. But the instructional part of life now has to come from us to tell them that college is not the end all. And yeah, I too, just like Crocker, I had a lot of guys on the fire department that I know, police department. And some of them, they know me better than I know them. They say, don't you remember me? And I'm looking at them, they're older. And of course, walking around and I remember you and I remember what you said and have some of the quotes that I used to say. They pulling out quotes that I used to.
I want to ask you that. Coach Crock, I want to start with you. I've been to one of your games at Ramapo, sat with you in the stands, and the old coach in you will never die. But also, I hear you express interest in the players that you were speaking of. You would tell me some things about them. And I'm saying, he's an AD. What does he know about it? Why is he taking that much concern? Because ADs, I know, they just sit in their office and try to raise money and do administrative work. But you were hands-on. But reason why I want to segue into this, I see a lot of pictures with you and your ex-players in there. I see you play homage to these players, and I see them return gratitude to you. Well, I want to ask the three of you, Reverend Brickle, you have a bond with a lot of your Southside connection and other people you ministered to in the past. Ed Down and Bishop, just like you just said, people see you and they know you better than you know them. Coach Crocker, you go first, please. What is the common thread with all of these people that have become successful?
Well, I think, again, it goes back to coaching and mentorship. And I think that I use the key word of love. I think that they knew that we cared. And when you're caring and you show them you care, you get so much more out of a person that way. You really do. The old adage, kill them with kindness. Well, kill them with love, because they'll respond when they know when they're down, you'll help them up. When they're wrong, you will make sure they know that they were wrong. When they lose, you teach them how to lose with class. And I think it's a bond that's created. And I think the great coaches have them. The good coaches have them too. Bishop, when you talked about, I don't want somebody out there that's dreaming, thinking about what they could have done back in the day. I really have much more respect for the people that go through the grind and have been through the tough days and the summer practices, the preseasons, the muddy days, the bad weather, got hurt, learned to get over a hurt. I showed much more respect for anybody that's gone through that type of grind. But I think it comes back to love and mentorship, that, they know you care for them, and you'll be there to get that phone call in the middle of the night when needed, and you'll respond, and a lot of it has, you'll tell them when they're wrong. I mean, I had to do some things coaching in New Rochelle high schools.
Right.
Were tough decisions. We didn't play some people for drinking in the locker room. They didn't play Thanksgiving Day. We had,
Right.
we had with some characters that we had to take a stance. And I always go back that, if you do it the right way, then I'll be behind you 100%. If you do it the wrong way, then I'll still be behind you, but you're going to learn from it, and I'm going to teach you a lesson from that. And I think that's the key. But if you care for the kids and they realize that you care for them, and you push for them to be better people and to work harder and be respectful, show love to people. I think that's where that all comes from. It's almost like a mutual respect that you have over the years.
What's that common thread with you, Rev?
I think a lot of it is connected to what Coach Crocker said. Yeah, the main thread is love. One of the things that I always think about and enjoy was when you and I worked at the Boys Club, and we did things at the Boys Club that was a little different than maybe some of the other directors. We took kids on buses to Philadelphia and other cities to play basketball. And so we bonded with a lot of our kids. We ran day camps where we bonded with them when they were young and showed love and cared for them. Same thing at Southside. I spent 5 years down there, and just really expressed love and tried to teach young boys how to be good men. And they respected that. Even to this day, 45 years later, I'm still reminded of it. Reminded of, hey man, you remember that song we used to sing day camp? Well, I saw some kids that play. They told me go away. I get mad. And kids remember that to this day. And they recite it to me when I talk to them, or they'll hit me on Facebook and they remember when I liked the blue Gillette ice creams, and I still get texts today. Hey Rev, can I get you a blue Gillette? And so that just shows me that those years that we were building together, I was growing into a man, and they were coming out of adolescence and going into some stages in life. There was a bond between us, and it was a great bond. And we just really loved and enjoyed each other, had respect for one another, had a comradeship with their parents when things weren't going wrong, when things had to be said that was tough to be said. The kids were misbehaving, when you had to bar kids from the Boys Club and from other activities because of their behavior and their lack of discipline. But all of that created a bond between us. 45 and 50 years later, we're still close. We still have that love for one another. And they always say, Rev, thank you for teaching us to be a man. And that's that bond. That bond is love. That bond is comradeship and respect for one another.
Bishop?
Yeah, and what you've all said, I agree, or as my wife would say, I concur. But let me say this. What I found all through the time that I've been at the high school, and I consistently do it now, is, sometimes we can get lost in a multitude of words. And with coaching, it's not in what you say, but it's how you say it. And a lot of coaches have been extremely effective in what they say, not how they say it, not what they say, but how they say it. And that is felt usually by teams and individuals in a locker room, because you have all kinds of emotions that go along in the locker room. I wish at times that I could take the pulse of a locker room before a championship game and allow people to come in and really feel the pulse or hear the pulse or the heartbeat of the players in it. Although it might seem to be calm, there's a lot going on in that. There's a lot of churning going on. Mm-hmm. So words like one wordy, persistence, having poise, energetic, be patient. One word to a person can change their life. And over the lifespan that seems to always get me, it's one word that I've said during a prayer, before a prayer, that I've said that has been extremely impressionable on an individual, and it stays with them. Now, I've forgotten about it, and they come back 20 years later and tell me I said something to them that stayed with them, and it became a standard in which they begin to live by. Mm. And I think that's what happens in the life of all people. Now, that leads me into the preacher side of me, because you don't need a whole lot of words.
That's right.
Sometimes people search for words, and all you got to do is say, "I love you."
That's right.
I mean, a lot of people haven't heard that. You take it for granted, like everybody's heard it. You walk to a kid and say, "I love you." They've never heard that before. They know that somebody cares for them. Somebody's taken the time to pause and say, if there's something that you need, come see me. Then you have to either mean that when you say it or don't say it at all, because that word that you've dropped into that individual is going to stay with them. And with that, I'm sure you guys can remember some things I used to say. 100% of nothing, 100% of something is better than 100% of nothing, over and over. And here it is, 55 or 60 years later, guys are calling me from Atlanta, telling me, you know who I am, and they say these little quotes over the phone. I'm trying to figure out who they are, and then they tell me who they are, and they've lived by it. It's their creed. They operate companies now. They're CEOs of companies. They run their own business. And so it's that affects me more than anything else when I hear them saying something you said 50 years ago. There's something that somebody said to each one of you that you really didn't pay attention to them when they said it. Mm-hmm. But at the time, it started a fire in you. It kindled something in you. Mm-hmm. It caused an emotion in you.
No, it's very true. I think one of the
let me just say this. Emerson used to grab you and say, "God dang it." God dang it. When he said that, you felt you were doing something wrong. You need to get in there and do something.
Go ahead, Coach.
No, I was saying one of the things that I really appreciate is when former players, they say that they're now coaching their kids, or they're coaching in high school level, teaching in high school level, and they come out with stuff that I said, and then
right.
Look around and go, geez, it hit him. It hit him in a certain way.
Right.
That they never forgot.
I go through that with my kids. Go ahead.
And that to me is really key. And you go back to one of the key words that we really haven't talked about that much is communication. And I tell people all the time that that is probably one of the key statements, that how we communicate to people is one of the key things in life. Just and be actively engaged in looking at a person and talking to a person genuinely, and say that I love you or whatever it is, but in a genuine manner. that's the key sometimes, is how we communicate, and the lack of communication causes so many issues across the board with young people, because and the second part of that is you got to be a good listener in order to be successful, in order to help kids, in order to be mentors. You really have to take a breath and be a good listener, learn how to listen, and then learn how to communicate where you can reach somebody. And everybody that was my mentor, coaches from Amundsen, to my coaches in college, and my assistant coaches elsewhere, because we battled a lot of times, but I'd listen, and I'd listen, and I'd learn how to communicate. And I think to really be successful, how you communicate to people around you, how do you communicate to the students or the young people that you're working with, is really key too. So that's a key word that we need to think about as we move forward to try to make these kids successful. Learn how to communicate with them.
Yeah, we're gonna get right into that. I want to, just to segue on top, feedback on what you're saying. Well, we tell people that I mentor or people that I was supervising, always remember, when one teaches, two learn. When one teaches, two learn, meaning that you're teaching somebody, but you have to learn what their response is and listen to what they're saying, like you were saying, Coach. Listen to what the pupil is saying, the student is saying, the athlete is saying. Listen to what they're saying to you, because that's what a conversation is. It's not dictating to anybody, because all that does is make a person become defensive or defiant, and they shut down. And if you want to teach somebody, you want them to be open. But the three of you have been very instrumental in my life, as you're talking about how others have. And I'm just going to bring up a few instances before we close up with the next topic. Like Bishop was talking about quotes, that things that he have said that he didn't even remember him saying, but I got something that happened. I'll give you the date. July 28th, 1990. Almost 31 years ago,
Right.
he officiated over my vows with my bride and my wife, who I love so much. And at the end, he didn't hand me over a card or envelope with a gift or anything. He said, what I put together stays together. And he meant that. He meant that. Took me back to City Park. The summer camp.
Yeah.
And Rev, I was a sophomore, and he took me under his wing. He's the smartest player I ever stepped on the field with. He could see things that other people wouldn't be able to see. I remember we were playing wing game, and Coach Amerson had me play the number one receiver in the city, man to man. We played zone. Well, we played a combination zone all year long, but he had me follow this guy. His name was Rodriguez. I'll never forget it. And he would go in motion. I would follow him everywhere, and we held him in check. And then one time, Rev saw something. I'm coming across, follow him. The guy's going in motion, and he's yelling at me, "Stay, stay, just stay." And I'm like, "But Coach Amerson said, follow him." But I stayed. Next play, I got interception. So, but from that point on, from 10th grade on, I was 15. We've been best friends ever since.
Amen. Amen. Mm-hmm.
Coach Crocker, I just had major surgery in June, and I was paralyzed. I couldn't pick up a phone or even the remote to the telephone. And Coach Crocker and I have always been cordial and respectful towards one another. And he had been trying to get in touch with me. I didn't realize it. I think he made contact with my wife or something. And the coach came out of him. The coach came out of him, that encouraging coach. He sent me a message. "Gerry, where are you? Get back to me. I'm worried about you." And I could feel that. I could feel that all the way in my bed from wherever he was. And that's that love you're talking about. So I know why all those players, when you're taking pictures of them, they all have smiles. And then that spread out in pictures. They're all embracing you. And it's just not the same group of people. It's people from Iona College, Rochelle High School, and our limit. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. But I want to close up with this. You said communication. There seems to be a lack of communication from the football field to society. That's what it sounds like. I've been listening to it, what everybody's been saying. The translation is getting lost somewhere. How can we step into that gap? How can we step into that gap to make a difference?
Well, I'm gonna start out, and I've had questions about communication often, and I think a lot of it starts at home. Communication starts at home, and there's been a loss of communication between parents and children. We talked about the playing those video games and those kind of things. With a lot of single parent households, parents have to work a lot more, put a lot more time into preparation of doing things for the family, and not enough time for communication. When I grew up, it was mandatory for me to sit around the table with my family to eat. I had to sit down and eat with my family every evening, and we talked. We talked about school, we talked about friends, we talked about all the things of life, and that was mandatory. Those things are missing. And one of the things, Gerry, as far as communication is concerned, I think because of the parents having so many more responsibilities, being single parent households and those kind of things, that we have allowed our children to be adopted by electronics. We turn them over to electronics. We buy kids phones at 5 years old. What are they going to do with a phone at 5 years old? We don't even know who they're talking to and spending time with on the phone at 5, 6, 7 years old. And that becomes their communication. So we lost something there that starts in the household that then travels outside of the house, that the phone is their best friend. Facebook is their best friend. Twitter is their best friend. Those are the people and the things that they communicate with more than having personal conversation. I can remember my phone ringing sometimes 25 and 30 times a day. Now it might ring once a day, and the majority of the communication is electronic. And so I think we've gotten away from personalized communication and sharing and more connected to electronics. And we've lost some. We've lost a lot in that. How do we get that back? You try to take these kids' phones away from them and see what type of response you get, or shutting them down. We don't pay attention. We lost that time at home where we spent time talking. My dad used to talk to me all the time. He would come home exhausted, and he would talk to me, sit down and spend time with me, direct me, spend time trying to help me to find a school to get into. He would how my pop was. He rough you up. He'd play with you and punch on you, beat on you, and then talk to you after it was all over. And he did that not with just me. He did it with you. He did it with Toomey. He did it with a lot of people. Because that was his love that he had for us. That was his way of communicating, and it was personalized, and then he'll talk to you. So everybody always had respect. And my father didn't have to be called Mr. Brickle. They called him Bo, because of the relationship they had with him. So how do we get that back? How do we redirect these kids from Facebook, Twitter, looking at these computers, looking on these phones, not having any guidance when they do that? We have young kids not having any guidance and getting on all of these sites that we don't even know they're on that are destructive. How do we regain their focus on just being able to communicate with them? That's a question that I'm putting out there for the other panelists.
No, that's the question.
Yeah.
That's my question. What is the mission and the vision to bridge that gap? I'd like your opinion on that.
It's personal interaction. I think mentors need to be personally involved, because we have lost that contact with direct contact with people. We've lost language skills. We've lost, everything's an emoji or something else. So we really don't have that personal reactions anymore. What I try to do with our athletes that are involved in our people that I know is I try to get them involved in community service. I think that that's something that needs to be brought to the forefront. I think if you can get a young person involved in community service, that's one way to take a step in the right direction to help other people out. And I think that's a learning curve there. We do it for all our teams. They have to be involved. They have to do a number of community service events. And it's amazing how, some of the younger gifted athletes will come back and go, wow, I didn't realize people had it so bad. They don't get that on Twitter or Instagram or whatever. They have an interaction with people and they actually do some physical things, because that's really key. So I think I took an interest many years ago in Special Olympics, because I said to me, those are the true athletes. They are just happy that someone's involved with them and happy that they have an opportunity to perform. And I really think that we need to guide young people into more community service actions too. I think you can do it at the church. Obviously, I do it with, who we have. And I think more people involved in education need to go that route, where they can see what other people are going through. And there's always somebody out there. And I tell my family this all the time. And I say to myself, bad as I got it some days, man, it's nothing like other people have. So I need to say, thank God. I got my health and I'm moving forward and I'm still in a good frame. So I like the idea of really getting young people involved in community service where there's interaction with other people.
Bishop?
Yeah, there's a saying when the organization that raises money for Black colleges saying a mind is a terrible thing to waste. And I think not only have we allowed ourselves to dwarf it to a place of not using our own minds to think, but we don't hear when people are talking to us. You said it, there is a lack of what I call social skills. They have no social skills. I opened up early on, I said, football is a great game. I think it's the greatest game in the world when it's taught right. Because then you're caused to listen and understand the X's and O's, and you're able to ask questions, and you don't have a phone in a room where the coach is talking, everybody's silent, and you're speaking to their minds about the game, what they need to do and how they need to interact. And in a room with a bunch of guys, those social skills come to the fore, because when they get out on the field, they have to talk. The linebackers got to talk to the tackles and the down linemen. The linebackers, the cornerbacks have to speak to the linebackers. So everybody's out there chattering back and forth. There's no phones there. So they're all communicating. In society, we've lost the ability to listen to people. We've lost our moral compass. We don't listen to people. We don't listen to people of authority. We think we know everything because the media has told us how we should think, what we should say, what kind of food we should eat, what we should drink. So the media has driven people into a corner where they don't have to worry about anything, because everybody has now become, which is critical in this age that we're in, they are now the source for other people. Gentlemen, we are not the source for anybody. God is the source for all of us. And what God has imparted in us, we're to share that with everybody and begin to let them know that they have the same ability to pass whatever knowledge they have on to the next person. My father was just a plain man. He was a working man. That's what he was. He was a working man. He worked. He worked hard with his hands. And he said constantly, he always used to say, I'm going to make $1. And he put us on the truck and we go out and we pick up scrap metal and we did one first thing, cut grass. We did everything. But we talked as we went along. We'd stop and have lunch together. We talked, but we be working together and doing things together. Today, the ability, that's a lack that parents have today. It's an indictment on parents. And it's an indictment on parents because the child is raising the parent when the parent should be raising the child. The child don't know anything, but the child seems to be telling the parent what they should be doing. And the parent says, my child is growing up now, and the child is not learning anything. And when you get out of your fishbowl at home and go out into the world at large, people want to know what you know. They want to know what you know. They don't want to know about your games that you play, your computers, and they don't want to know that. They want to know what you know. Can you interact? Can you communicate? When any application is put out, they will ask you about your communication skills. So these things I think need to be addressed. Anytime that I'm talking with young people, I don't want a young person looking on the ground. I want them to look me eyeball to eyeball when I'm talking to them, and I want them to respond to me eyeball to eyeball, not look over in the corner at something else. But then I have their attention. Now I know they're hearing me when I'm speaking. And with that, I think that's a lesson that everybody needs to understand, and we need to grasp it and translate this down to the young people. I do it at the church, although sometimes they don't listen. Even when I say it 10 times, they still don't listen. So I have to call their attention. And so we just have to, at this critical time that we're living in, try to reinstill into other people that there is an ultimate source in this world, and we've got to become dependent upon them. We're here, gentlemen, because of God. We're here because of something we did great. We're here because God has allowed us to be here. That's and right. He has given us something to do. And what it is that we have to do, it is important and incumbent upon us to leave an indelible mark on this earth. So you're just not here by happenstance. God put you here for a purpose, and you're to influence the next person going down the line. As I said, when I look over my shoulder, I want to know, who do I hand this baton to when I walk out the door? Who's going to be the next person? Or with this censoring going on everywhere, I'm very concerned. When I go on the field now, if those guys take a knee and they pray, will somebody get offended and say, what are they doing? They've got no business doing that. It's going to drop. It's going to drop. But I'm well prepared for it, but it's going to drop. But see, the guys, the young people, it's been done so long that they want it to happen. They want this to go on. And so, and repetition is the name of the game here. Repetition. It sounds old, it sounds fragmented, it sounds like it's old hat. But the more you do something over and over, repetition, when you do things in a repetitious way or speak in a repetitious way, somewhere along the line, people will grasp it. Young people will grasp it. I tell my son Wednesdays the other night to put the garbage out. Mm-hmm. He don't do it the first time. I tell him again. I don't tell him anymore after that. I look at him and he knows. Yeah, Dad, I know it. I know what time it is.
Right. We have to be consistent.
So, and we can't be fearful. We can't be fearful, Greg, Gerry. We can't be fearful. A lot of adults are afraid to talk to young people.
And that's go ahead.
Bishop, you know what one of the problems are, Bishop? One of the problems is that you got to realize that your child ain't your friend. You're a parent.
Right.
And I think
Right.
we end up treating our children like friends.
Right. And even the children that you're mentoring, you're not their friend. You don't want to be their friend. You want to be the mentor. You want to tell them what life is about.
Also, we have a chasm with social media dealing with the effects and the infects of the prisons of the things that we're being told, whether it's misinformation or information. That is something that we have to guard against. And that's why you're talking about that repetitiveness, repetition. It's also, I look at it as being consistent and working side by side with those that we are mentoring, those that we're teaching, working with them hands-on rather than from a distance. And that's what's appreciated. And certainly with this pandemic, go ahead.
But you have to understand, as I have said to the church at large, and we're talking about it now, we have entered a new age. It's called the digital age. We've got to learn how to incorporate what we do on a daily basis into this digital age and not allow the digital age to become the dominant factor.
That's right.
Even though we talk here, we're talking here. We're on Zoom. We're doing all of this. No, there is no substitute by saying of us saying, look, next week we're going to get together and sit down for breakfast. There's no substitute for that. I don't care what you do. When we can sit down over a cup of coffee. My greatest strength when I was in the corporate world and the best time of making sales was out on the golf course. It wasn't on no phone. That guy would talk to me 2 seconds on the phone. But when I got on that golf course, I could ask him anything. He'd say, you got it, whatever you want. Of course, I got to give him a couple strokes, but I don't.
And that's my point. Being consistent with that relationship.
Right.
Right. Side by side, building a relationship. And let's not forget, due to the pandemic, there's a lot of social isolation, and there's a lot of food insecurity that people are going through. And I remember I was working in New York City during the AIDS epidemic, and I was doing social work at that time. And I saw the breakdown of the families and how it affected their children and everybody in the community. And the only way that you could get to people is by identifying with them and letting them know that you care. That's showing them a better way. And you have to be consistent and patient. That's another thing. We just can't go in dictating to people. We have to be who we are and know what the barriers are and be willing to confront and challenge those. And that's the gap I'm talking about filling, to be able to go head on and knowing what we're against and standing tall and straight in the face of that adversity. And then that's how you gain respect, and that's how I feel you gain an ear. There's something that, as far as the holistic part that we're teaching, everybody's been talking about the spiritual part, the athletic part. There's another part called hedonic adaptation, or the hedonic treadmill, letting people know that your successes, your failures, they're always going to come back to an even level. You're not going to be as successful. You're not going to have that happy high all the time. And then when you fail and make a mistake, you're not going to be miserable all the time. As time goes on, you'll get to a balance, a status quo. And we have to let people know that when you're happy, yes, celebrate that. And that's all well and good. And we have to celebrate that with them. But then when they fail or feel they fail, or they do not succeed or reach a goal, we have to be there to empower them and uplift them. And I think that's where our work is going to come into right now, uplifting those that have given up.
Gerry, you just talked about everything you just said is things that we learned on a football field. You know, if you think about it, it goes back to all the traits that we were taught. We were blessed again to being taught that, hey, you know, you're there when things get tough. We're there. Things are great. We'll celebrate together. We're there. So I mean, those are all very important things that we were blessed to have learned, and I think that that's something that football. Why I love football so much is that's where I gained most of this, most of me. Let's put it that way.
And we have all that in common. And it seems like there's a part two in the making. And being respectful of everybody's time. I think we're gonna have to close with this. And I look forward to a part two because there's so much to say and so many places to go. And there's a lot to do. And if you guys are willing to put a part two in effect, I'm willing to do so as well. So on that note, Bishop, can you close us with prayer, please?
Yeah, before I
has
do,
anything to close with.
yeah,
Have any closing statements?
I want to say this. One of the aspects that must be also in the idea of mentoring young people, I think older people have to learn to ask permission before they say things. And that's what life anyway. You just don't say things right off the top of your head. You know, in the book of Proverbs, it says, a fool uttereth all his mind. Sometimes this is where confrontations come from. But if I ask you permission, is it okay if I say something to you? And we need to be able to talk to young people that way, and then vice versa. It's okay. But at the same time, I'm going to say something to you, and I want you to feel free to say something back to me at the same time. We're giving permission without violating one another. I think we verbally violate each other. I think people verbally violate each other, even in this society we're in. We violate each other without asking permission. Once we ask permission, we're in a safe zone. But when we don't build that wall, I think that's a critical place that we get into with young people. And then they get angry with us and they shut down. And they said, well, I didn't know you were going to say that. I didn't tell you to say that. And I didn't want you to say that. So, but that's for another time.
Reverend Brickle taught me, a fool is considered wise when he keeps his mouth shut.
Yeah. That's what, yeah.
A fool is considered wise when he keeps his mouth shut.
Yeah.
Rev or Coach, you have any closing statements or remarks?
No, I just want to thank you all for inviting me and having this opportunity to really talk about, I think, what makes us a family. And I think that's where it all comes back to is the opportunity to try to do good things for each other and with each other. And, again, I said I tell my former players that we were blessed to be in Rochelle. And again, when I say that doesn't mean we didn't have issues, and that doesn't mean we didn't go through problems, and that doesn't mean we didn't fight, because we did. But at the end of the day, we learned to smile and we learned to communicate, and we learned to be part of a rich tradition and a family. So I just want to say thank you. And to me, that's where, if we could get people heading in that direction, we certainly be in a better place.
I can say that I'm truly thankful to be invited, to be able to share, to be on this panel with some incredible, amazing football players, coaches, pastors, men, family leaders, community leaders. I just feel honored and blessed. And then I do pray that when this project is finalized and sent out, that it will impact young folk, it will impact families, that it will even impact the church, that they can recognize how important it is and the role that they play, not only in just the church, but also in family and athletics also, because it all comes together to make up a total person.
Thank you. I consider you all the dream team. I had a plethora of players, athletes to choose from. And I chose you all for a reason. You were my first round picks. And I thank you all for accepting the invitation. Not one of you said, I'll get back to you, Gerry, or no. The problem was you guys are so busy. It's just everybody was, I had to be respectful of everybody's time and what your schedules are. And you come doing a hell of a service for the communities of which you serve. And I'm glad we were able to put this together. And it had to be God's will to do it. And I am so looking forward to do it again.
Amen.
You guys would want to go into a different realm of discussion because this was powerful. And this is going to be put out. This was supposed to only be an hour, brothers. This was supposed to be an hour.
And believe me, with all our Rochelle stories, this could go on all night long, too.
It could.
And having two preachers on the panel doesn't hurt and an old ball coach, man. Please, I knew you guys been great.